see if this held up. Nope. That stinks. Alright, well, just so you guys from last time, we reflanged these brake lines to go into here, and we're hoping it would work. It didn't work. It's still leaking not from the reservoir to here, not to the master cylinder, but actually around where the line goes into the master cylinder. So that means that we need to go to plan B. So what I'm thinking is it might be worth these brake lines. I bought, here, you'll get it? I'll show you. So I told you last time that I had to get the flanging here. Actually, is two different types of flanges. There's the bubble flange at the top and the double flange. So I got another, see if you can see that. Yeah, another double flange, another flanging kit. It's very similar to the other one. I'll go through how that's different. And then I just bought a bunch of brake line. And this actually is the nickel copper line, nickel copper, yeah, 3/16. But it comes in like 25-foot sections. So what I'm thinking is I might just go ahead and replace it. This stuff is these are steel, and they're kind of a pain to work with. And then this line stuff is actually a lot easier to manipulate and bend. And it's also a lot easier to flange because I think it's just a little softer. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and replace the brake lines. The fronts actually aren't that bad. It's going to require getting the whole car up, just so I can get and take the front wheels off, and so I can just get access to those a little bit better, a little bit more easily. The back's a big pain because it goes down here, around, over, back behind the engine, down, and then along the passenger side of the car. So it's actually a much longer run, I believe. They also run really low in the engine compartment. Let's see if I can get you and get a light over there. Hold on. You might be able to. You can see them right there. This is the speedometer cable. This is the throttle the bracket for the throttle thing, and then below that, along the firewall, are the brake lines. So it's just going to be kind of fiddly. Get them out of there. It's not the worst. It's not like they're buried so far down you can't see them. It's just going to require getting underneath, above and underneath. So I'm going to get this car up in the air, and then bring it back, and we'll start taking these out. All right, get these wheels off. Okay. You can now really see where all the brake fluid leaked all over everything. So that's handy. Let me get a better light so we can see better down there. Right. Let's turn this. Okay. So here you can see where the brake line goes through the firewall. The fluid was leaking down, and you can actually see there, like where it's shiny, is like leaking down the actual line down to there. And as you can see, there's some cleanup to do. It looks like the cardboard got some of it, but not all of it. And it didn't get that spider right there either. So anyway, we're going to take that line off. I'm going to go to get the other wheel off, and then we can start see if we can fish that other line out as well. So that's what we're doing. All right, so just need to take this thing off. This is the Tektron line wrench set. I bought these. They are really convenient to not have the actual size you want. This 16 mil. This wrench, double-sided, comes conveniently with the 15 millimeter and the 17 millimeter. The other end is 11 mil, right? And it comes conveniently with this one that's 10 millimeter on one side and 12 millimeters on the other. So this line wrench set that I bought does all the line sizes except the 2 line sizes that I actually have on the car. So super convenient, awesome, love that stuff. But loosened that. It's probably going to bleed out the rest of the brake fluid. So go ahead and see that coming and get a rag, or probably a couple rags. Collect that mess. Yep, there it goes. Luckily, most of it's probably leaked out already. And it's good, it's convenient to, like, when you do this, it's convenient to keep the line that you take out, even though this is too short, we know it is, but you can follow this as kind of a pattern to make your new line. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and cut these. I need to reuse these nuts. But let's go ahead and get all that stuff off over on the bench, and then we can copy this line and make it with the new stuff. Okay, so here we are. I've got the old brake line off of the driver's side here, and then I've got my new brake line stuff here. Sorry, it's kind of a mess here. So what we're going to do is we're going to first cut our work off here. That was the bubble flange, and then we're going to work basically just redo this whole thing, but do it in the style that it was. So bubble flange on one side, double flange on the other. We're gonna have to take this nut off and this nut. And so just so everybody knows, from what I can tell, from what I've heard, the reason they do a double flange at the bottom is that this is better. It was because it's for some reason, because it's lower, it prevents this from leaking. I don't know why they did it. Mainly because, I don't know, maybe somebody in the Alpha factory had, somebody in the flange die manufacturing business, the engineering department at Alpha's brother made flanging tool kits. Anyway, so we're going to generally get the length. Remember, one of the reasons that we needed to redo this line anyway is that we cut it, you guys had nothing to do with it. I cut it too short, so I'm just going to make sure that we have enough extra length on here so that it doesn't happen again. So we're going to make it longer, and then we're going to try to copy the shape and the length now, and then go ahead and cut it, just so we know that we've got it. And this stuff is like a million times easier to bend than the steel stuff. So you can really just do it by hand. I probably should be using a tube bender or something like that, but I don't have one, so I'm not going to. So you just kind of guesstimate on general length. And these flanges also, remember these flanges are actually going to take up some distance themselves, right? They're going to be, you know, they're going to smush the end, so you want to cut it just a little bit longer. You don't want a ton, but you can, I mean, this is pretty easy to, since this stuff's pretty easy to bend, you can kind of bend it so that it's not, that's a lot of, I think that's fire truck. Oh. Okay, let's go check and see what that is. Anyway, here we go. We're gonna cut this length, and then we got the length right, and then we're gonna cut the, this to get these nuts off, and so we can reuse them. So again, just same deal, just spin it a few times, twist, spin it a few times, twist. Usually takes, 4 or 5 twists. This is actually a lot easier stuff. All right, so one of the problems is we're gonna have to kind of unbend this and rebend it to get these like nuts going the right way and all that sort of stuff and get them off the, but we should be able to pull that off relatively easily. All right. Out of the way. Now this is just, you need to straighten, this nut doesn't go around these turns very well, so you just need to straighten it out a little bit to get it to move. All right, anyway, back in bed. All right, take the opportunity also to just take the grommet out. That's where the line goes through the body. Let's take this out. It's all grungy and gross. I don't think you want to use any sort of like brake cleaner, that sort of thing on here. You want to make sure that you just kind of wipe it off just to, but it's nice and spongy still, so spongy, so it's in good shape. All right, so I just test fit this just to see we have close to the right shape. We do. It's a little long, but that's okay because you can just kind of bend this over, let it go, and then bend it up. You know, you can get rid of length pretty easily. Just make sure you put the nuts on. This one, I already did the one flange with the tool. I was playing around with it inside, so when I got the kit, so just to make sure that this line was the right kind and all that sort of stuff, and that works great. Make sure you put the nuts on here, and then, you know, we've done this before, so you put the, it's a lot easier to do outside of the car. You put the line in through here, tighten that down a little bit, on that side, make sure that you have this cutout length worth. Let's see if you can see that. Crank this side down, and you can crank this side down. I was using the vice grips. You don't need to do that because, again, not following the directions. Then you have enough there. Make sure that you have the right die on this side. Put this in like that. Feed feed the die threaded in there like that. So it's that pin on the inside of the die goes in, and then this goes on the outside, and then you just tighten this. All the way down so that it's flush. Like that. Pull it out. Shows nice. That. Screw that end. Screw that end. And there you go. Bubble flange. This nut goes down behind it, like that, and presses, basically just presses this in. And I can already see that this is actually quite a bit better than the last one I did. The seal line is just a lot harder to work with. I think this stuff is actually a lot easier. Hopefully it works. Alright, so the next step is feed this back in through there and yeah, hook it up. Alright, so there it is. The new line. Run the new line through there. You see how the flange is there. You can just kind of finger tighten that down, or just put it on there. And then back up here in the engine bay, line's coming out here. Probably want to make sure that you run it so these lines are over top. Okay, so unfinger tighten it, pull it back out, make sure you feed it under there, then start the nut down there, and then we'll bend it around so that it meets the port in the bottom. That goes in, this one goes in the bottom of the front. So this one is the passenger side, and then the driver's side goes right there. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, well, still a pain. It's so much better to have this easier to bend line, to line this up. One of the problems I kept getting into is that this forward port isn't exactly, it's not like straight up and down. It's kind of like at an angle. And it's really difficult to line it up and get it in there correctly without cross-threading it. So it's a gigantic pain on that front. So I got it in there. And I'm just going to tighten it down. I think with this softer line too, this should probably have a little bit more of a, I'm hoping that this solves my problem. It has kind of more of a squishing action, like it meets the thing, and then when you push, when you put the nut down, it squishes the end of the line to fill that gap. And I'm hoping that works a lot better. Just replace some of these lines that I moved. Put the line through, just to keep them out of the way. This line shouldn't be a big problem where it is, but we'll see. And then all it is tighten the line down below. Then I'll go ahead and take this line off, and we'll see, take it off on the other side, take it off here, and see if we can kind of wiggle it out. See if I can get you a better spot so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. And then see if we can wiggle this thing out of there, out of the way. Let's get this line out in without bending it too much, so we can use the shape to make the other one. I'm sure this is going to be giant pain because it feeds above, it feeds over the steering box and underneath the brake booster. So that'll be fun. Anyway, well, we can get this top part out. Get that out of the way, and then take off the in the wheel well on the other side, and then see if we can start wiggling this thing out. Well, to answer your question, no, I didn't hear you until it was too late. No. So it turns out there's this little distribution block here. So the line comes out of here through the well, just like it does on the other side, comes around here, curls into the top here, and then the line that goes to the booster itself actually terminates in the bottom of this. And then same thing with the rear. So the this line comes in here at the top and goes to the rear there, and this has a sensor on it, probably brake pressure, brake fluid, brake something or other sensor. I will read up on this, and so I will be able to tell you specifically what all this stuff does. But that means that the line that I have to create doesn't have to bend all the way over here and then go all the way over there. I just have to remove it from the bottom here, and then the other one from the bottom of the other side of this distribution block. So, for all the people who knew what they were doing, and that's not me, there you go. I now know that this exists. Didn't see it on any of the drawings I looked at. I probably didn't look very closely. But I actually have found a wealth, just a kind of a secondary note, I found a wealth of knowledge on additional diagrams and stuff that I found. I found a really nice wiring diagram. I found a really nice brake diagram. I've actually found some information on how the air conditioning system works and how it's wired. So I actually found quite a bit of stuff that I was not able to find prior. So that's good. I just didn't, that doesn't, just because I found it doesn't mean I actually looked at any of it. This is all good. So take these guys off, then take this line out. It's actually not that difficult to get to. I'm saying that now before I actually get to it. Yeah. So I will undo it there, take it out, and then, yeah, and then we can model a new line. Okay, so I've got the lines loose from here, and the lines loose from the block. This whole mechanism in here is the actual throttle. The rod, unfortunately, is right over. So this is where the throttle, the handle, and the cabin goes. But it's all part of the same thing. It's the throttle. There's this connected on here. The spring down here controls the whole thing. So that's your throttle. Unfortunately, the rod that connects, the connecting rod for the throttle, goes all the way across, right on top of where the brake lines are. So you have to kind of get a screwdriver, kind of wedge it in there, pull off that foldy metal bracket thing that holds it in place, get it out of the way so that I can get the brake lines out. So there are basically three of those. There's one right underneath here, right behind the steering box. There's one over here. You can just barely see it at the end of the screwdriver. Light's a little bad, but there's one there that holds it. And again, it's those metal bendy clip things. So anyway, this isn't just the throttle handle thing. It's the actual throttle linkage that goes over and actually runs the throttle over here on the, this guy here, whatever that's actually called. Don't know. Part of the throttle system. Anyway, so it's kind of a pain, but what are you gonna do? What a humongous pain. So here's the deal. Here's how these guys are routed. See if this makes any sense to you. So they come off, both of these run the same way. They come off of here, and they go down, they go between the booster and the box, the steering box, and then go underneath the steering column and then over through the spring to where it's just makes no sense. And then they go down along here. There's an unbelievably difficult metal thing to like bracket thing to get off, pinned underneath where the throttle is. Then they go around down underneath a bunch of wires that they don't need to, and then up. It's like they couldn't have routed it in a way that was more difficult. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make them so they would come down here, go underneath the brake booster, but on this side of the steering box, go dive, probably still underneath the spring. That's not a big deal. You can always just take the spring off. And then along underneath, and then up and over the wires. Let me show you over here what wires I'm talking about. So what was happening is they were run along here, down underneath all of the wires that go to the starter, and then to the box, which I guess isn't that big of a deal, as long as you can kind of like, you know, you're going down and then getting a straight shot into underneath here, which I'm fine with. I can do that. I don't want to make any more loops than I have to, just to avoid, you know, places where bubbles can, when you're purging, when you're bleeding the brakes. And then taking the wires off, you know, taking these wires off of the pressure sensor and the starter and all that sort of stuff isn't really all that wasn't that big of a pain. It's just the steering box part was just really there's no way to get them out like cleanly, so I mangled them pretty badly, but at least I'll have I can run a string along them and figure out what the exact length is that I need, and then I can, you know, the new tubing is so much easier to bend than this stuff. You know, I can just put the flares on, put the nuts on, bend it pretty close, you know, get the string out, make sure I have the right length, bend it pretty close, and then, yeah, move forward from there. So, one of the things I was thinking is I found this, this like galvanized wire that I'm going to actually make the right length, cut them to length with the same things, and then this holds its shape well enough that I can see if I can kind of get a shape that I can actually feed through easily, and then remake these lines and then feed them through. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. Cut these to length, or cut them close to length, I guess, and then just leave them long, and then cut them specifically to the length that I need, and that way I can just, and then hopefully keep the bends, you know, pretty consistent, so I can just model the line off of that. That'll be a lot easier than, you know, trying to like do it with just with the line. This will give me a little intermediate step to be able to do that. So that's what I'm gonna do, and yeah, so let's do it. I guess what I'll do is I'll first get some gloves on, because this brake fluid gets absolutely everywhere. I can probably just wipe these off so I don't have to keep worrying about it. But there's still brake fluid in here that this is kind of leaking, kind of constantly leaking out. Guess I can use a clean spot of this rag. It's just blue. Do anything? Alright, so maybe it's all leaked out. Anyway, so knock these down, and then get this wire. I'm not worried about the bends so much right now because I had to mangle these to take them out so bad that I'm just making sure that you know, I'm following the curves just so I have the right length. So this is actually working strangely well. I did one of them already and did the wire, and then bent another, basically the the hardline version of it. This actually is really easy to do, but this is a great way to do it with this line. The steel line would be a big pain, but basically what I did is created another version that goes, it's basically this wire version. This is the other front. It doesn't. I mean, it's not a perfect shape, but you get pretty close to the idea. And then as you're as you've got the length and you're bending it, and then you kind of bend it along, and this at least gets you really close to what you're doing. So if you start with essentially taking this line and just pretty carefully kind of trying to get it as straight as you can, that way you're not fighting the bend. Sorry, doing completely off camera. You're straighten the line like this, so you're not fighting the kind of natural bend in the roll. And then you can start either end. It doesn't really matter. It's usually easier to start on the kind of the less technical one, right? So, and then this gives you kind of a 3D model of what it's going to look like. So this is going to go. This part goes along the the steering box is here, goes up and over the top, goes in up, and then comes like this, and then goes into the master cylinder, goes down, then along the firewall, and then curves over up into that distribution block over on the other side. So that's this. So then you just follow this kind of as a pattern, and then you fit it into fit in the part that you cut it, and then you kind of do the final design, right? The final shape, which is just more nuanced. And this holds its shape obviously a lot better than the wire does. So works pretty well. So I'm just gonna kind of bend along on this. It's kind of fiddly. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do, and then I'll show you once I get the line generally the shape. I will show you in the car how I do it. I realized that I didn't show you the other type of flaring tool. So this is the bubble flange, right? That's how you do. That's pretty straightforward. The other type of flange is what's called a double flange. It's a pretty similar set of tools and stuff, but it comes out, it just looks different. It's just a different type. So this, the big difference, you'll see that this has, you know, the ends are different. This one basically squishes the line around into this die and squirts it out. And then this one basically has, it's kind of a two-parter, right? So you put the same, this block is a little different too. So on this one, you're basically looking for, there's a very small chamfer, if really at all. And so the back of this is really supposed to be flat because you've got that nut that presses right up against it and pushes it in. That's how these flanges work. This one, you'll see, you know, this is the bubble flange one, and you'll see that there's no flange, there's no like chamfer. This one's there's a pretty, you can see it on the 1/2 inch one. You can see the big chamfer there. So what you do is pretty similar. You put the line through this one. So on the way you're supposed to be able to remember the amount of line that comes out here, there's a little notch in this set, and you just set that in to set your distance. This one, it says that you're supposed to essentially have about that distance, the width, the height of this little die. So you want to squirt it down to about right there. Same deal, tighten this nut first. And then this is a two-part step. So the first part is you want to stick this, the first step is to pick, and again there's several different sizes of these guys. Right, so that goes in the 1/2 inch line, this is the 3/16. So what you're doing is you're sticking this in and you're making this you're squirting it around this beveled edge is the first step. So you take this, you put the die, it's a little trickier because you're going to have 3 hands. So you want the die to go in to into the line, which of course it's going to be a pain because I didn't cut. Hold on a second. You need to make sure that when you cut it, because it kind of has a tendency to squirt the inside in, so it makes it a little hard for this die to go in there. But there it goes. And then you take this, and there's a little pocket where the point of this thing goes. That. Stick the rod in. Tighten it all the way down. Again, this is way easier on this nickel line than it is on the steel line. So you want to pliers to get this die out of here. Should come out relatively easily. And then you'll notice what ended up happening is this first step, you don't need to take it out. You can just leave this in. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. You'll see that it basically like made this That's step one. So it made this bevel. This one wasn't completely straight. You need to make sure that you cut these really straight, especially with this. It makes a big difference. So you don't want to, it's a little blobbed off on one side. But I'm just using this scrap piece to show how this works. So you don't want to take it out of the die once you have it in there. Once you do that, because then the next step is you take, out of the clamp, you take the die out, and then you take this pointed edge, and then that goes just directly in the hole, and then you tighten this down. And then when you take that back off, you'll see that the shape of this is pretty different, right? It's more of like it's almost like a end of a trumpet or something, right? It's like a bell. So let's bend this so you can see them right next to each other. So bubble edge, double flange, bubble flange, double flange. Anyway, the process is pretty similar. The way that this has the nut for this one actually, it's like shaped with this bevel in it, and so this just clamps this down onto there, as opposed to where here the nut sits right behind this, right behind this edge and presses this in. So those are the differences. Don't worry, I didn't forget. I got back down here and tightened these down. So how this works is this 16, this is a 14, and then there's another down here that's a 15. And this is the end of the soft line, the rubber line. You want to grab this with the 15 and tighten this down, making sure that you're still on, pretty much in the hole, and you're not flexing or pressing the line somewhere. This nut, you hold on to this one, and then you tighten this one down when you have when you want to make sure that this line isn't twisted at all. This is what holds that in place. So this holds the line to here, and this, tightening this down while holding this, tightens this line to this line. Holding this bottom part while tightening this holds this in the bracket. So that's how that works. Okay, got one more flange to make, one more bubble flange on this one. Got this one in. This is the rear is in for the rear brakes. This is the passenger side brake line, passenger side. So they are run together, still mounted back up. I zip tied them a couple places too, just to kind of hold them in place. Once I get these screwed in and I know exactly where everything is going to go, I'll go back and clean it up a little bit. It's not pretty, but it's the first time I've ever done this. So it's going to, just make sure that it doesn't, it's not sitting on an exhaust manifold or something, getting bound up in something or touching a bare wire or any of that sort of nonsense. I'm fairly confident that it's not terrible. It's not great. It's not pretty. But I think just the way it's set up, it's a lot easier to do the brake lines and stuff if you don't have the engine in. Not going to take the engine out to do brake lines, though. So it's as good as I can get it for now. So yeah. So if I ever do like a more thorough restoration, take the motor out and rebuild it or something like that, then I'll do that. But not doing that now. So this is a repeat. You've already seen me do this, so I won't bore you with it, but that's where we are. Just need to do this one last line, and then tighten everything down, and then fill in brake fluid and hopefully not have it leak. So I'll do this flange, get it in there, tighten everything down, and I'll be right back. Okay, well, everything's back on. Put some more fluid in here, brake fluid in here. We'll see how that goes. Let's see if there's a... Yeah, these guys are popping up a little bit. So we'll see if those guys stay popped up or they fall down. Hopefully this fixed it, because I really don't know what else to do. So, one of the next things to do, you should look at the notes down below on, I think, the 3rd episode. Somebody pointed out in the comments that if you don't mark where because the windshield wiper motor has kind of a memory of where it's kind of a physical memory on the actual motor itself of where all this stuff sits. So remember and a couple episodes ago when I turned it back on when we were checking them, that they were going down first and then up. Well, it's because I didn't take a note of that. I didn't know anything about it. Need to do my homework a little bit more, obviously, before I start cracking into things. So this all has to come back off, the cowl and the windshield wiper blades and all that sort of stuff, and then I gotta figure out how to correct what I messed up. So yeah, but I'm not gonna do that on this one. The other part is, I guess, the next step. Put all this stuff back together, put the airbox on, if this is fixed, then we can move on. Next thing I'm probably going to do, aside from this and some of the wiring stuff, I don't know what the order is going to be, but we pretty soon need to get the speaker pump out to send off. So we had to drain the coolant out of the radiator, get the radiator out of the way, the belts off, get the cover off, get the pump out, get the injectors off, all that sort of stuff, and all this to get boxed up and shipped out to Wes. So I don't know how much of a delay there's going to be on that with all this COVID-19 nonsense, but there could be a delay. So, but need to get it out regardless because it needs to go off pretty soon. So that'll be in some future episodes. So that's it for here. I know this is kind of boring. It's kind of like redoing stuff, but I learned a lot about how to do brake lines. Hopefully I learned how to do brake lines. This would be I don't want to do this anymore. Anyway, so I guess until next time.